can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Danny as always. This is a special video discussing who we believe to be Britain's best current male pound for pound fighter. There's a few names that Danny and I came up with off camera, but we haven't discussed in depth at all. We're going to do that now on camera. So if you're watching this for the very first time, the channel that is, please do subscribe, like this video, let us know in the comments your thoughts on what we're about to discuss. But yes, Danny, we're here to discuss, I suppose, the current landscape, the current pound for pound landscape in Britain. Maybe not as maybe not as stacked as it once was. But yeah, we may as well get straight into it. A few fighters that we kind of reeled off there who could definitely be in contention. So take it away and just maybe give me your first name. Not who you think is out and out number one. We'll come to that at the end, but someone who could definitely be in the mix.
Yeah, as you say, Paul, we're definitely in a bit of a lull when it terms of world champions. Only one active world champion in the sport at the minute for the Brits, who I think we'll come on to, and Nick Ball. But before we get there, I'll go for someone who's not a world champion right now, has been one before, and could be one soon. That's Callum Smith. Got that WBO interim world title at light heavyweight. Of course, been a world champion at super middleweight. Got a win over George Groves. Great win last time out over Joshua Buatsi. Fight he was an underdog in, and I think impressed everyone who watched with his performance, and maybe silenced a few critics. So I think you've got to have Callum Smith in there. That's one that could be on to become a world champion, a two-weight world champion as well. Although light heavyweight, very very strong at the top end of the division. When you look at David Benavidez, WBO, that's the belt Callum would be competing for. That's obviously held by Dimitri Bivol. So time will tell if he does go on to become a two-weight world champion. Talk of a fight between him and David Morrell, which would be a fantastic fight and a great name on his resume if he can get it. But regardless, I think you've still, for what he's achieved in the sport, how talented a fighter is, and maybe because the quality at the top end of British fighters maybe isn't what it was, I think you've got to have Callum Smith in that conversation.
Yeah, he's definitely a name that you have to mention at least when you're talking about maybe top three, top five, pound for pound British fighters. I think you've explained that well. Former world champion. He's yes, okay. He's maybe lost. He obviously lost that Canelo fight fairly convincingly, as well as the Beterbiev one. But then they're talking about elite guys there. And when he's down that just below that, he's showed that he more than belongs there. And yeah, fingers crossed we see him in more massive fights at light heavyweight, as you say. And ultimately, I'm a big Callum Smith fan, as I'm sure a lot of people are. So if he was able to become a two-weight world champion, I'd be delighted with that. Yeah, so I can't disagree there, mate. Another name I'm going to mention and throw at you now is that of Hamza Shiraz. Obviously has challenged for world honors against Carlos Adames. Maybe, underwhelmed on that night. I think it was an overriding favourite, I think. Whether or not the hand injury or he just underperformed on the night, whatever happened, whether he was dead at the weight. But since has moved up to super middleweight and absolutely obliterated Edgar Berlanga. Looked sensational, got him out of there, something Canelo couldn't do, of course. So maybe not the leading pound for pound fighter right now from UK shores, but definitely a notable mention for him, in my opinion. I think he's a world champion in waiting, for sure. And yeah, I think that if you're looking at someone who's maybe going to be the future and well, the best fighter from these shores in the next few years, I think you've got to mention Hamza Shiraz.
Yeah, can't argue with anything you've said. Hamza Shiraz flying very high off that win of Edgar Berlanga, not just the victory, but as you say, the manner of which he dispatched them made much shorter work of Edgar Berlanga than Canelo Alvarez did, which is obviously a fight that's being touted potentially down the line for Hamza Shiraz. And if that's one that could happen, that could, skyrocket him straight to the top of this list. Maybe doesn't have the wins on his resume of some of the fighters we'll maybe come on to. Got some good wins, of course. Tyler Denny's a good fighter. He's obviously your big mate. And Amma Williams, very good fighter, sort of seen as a fringe world level middleweight. Think we're probably going to see the best of Hamza Shiraz up at super middle. By all accounts, that cut down to 160 was very tough for him. Played a factor in the Carlos Adames defeat, though I think you have to say that Adames proved to be a bad style for him in that night. But no disgrace, Carlos Adames is a very good fighter, very strong world champion, and the best, it seems, is yet to come for Hamza Shiraz. So maybe not number one now, maybe not number one or two now, but can't imagine it'll be too far away.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more. We may as well come on to a name now that you mentioned at the top of the video. Britain's only active world champion. That is, of course, Nick Ball, featherweight champion. I think he holds a WBA belt down there. I mean, obviously won it against Ray Ford in a great fight. A lot of people maybe thought Ford nicked it, but it was Ball that got the decision. Either way, it was a really close fight, and he more than showed that he belongs at world level. Since then, has defended it on two occasions, Ronnie Rios and TJ Dehaney. He's obviously fighting Sam Goodman on the 16th of August as well. So potentially another defense there. As the only world champion from these shores, you've got to have Nick Ball right up there, if not at number one, surely.
Yeah, Nick Ball would be number one for me at the minute. You touched on the Ray Ford fight, and regardless of how you have that fight scored, it was a very close fight. And to run Ray Ford that close is a really good bit of form to have a win over Ray Ford, as Nick Ball does. Ray Ford flying since moving up to 130, won the world title in a fantastic fight against a fantastic fighter in Otabek Kolmatov. And the fight before that for Nick Ball, Ray Vargas, a lot of people thought he was hard done by there, only getting awarded a draw on the scorecards. Ray Vargas, a very accomplished fighter, multi-weight world champion. Even the win before that to deal with Isaac Dogbay in convincing fashion. Dogbay too, a former world champion, mixed it with some very, very good fighters, Navarrete to name one. And yeah, obviously TJ Dehaney, Ronnie Rios, they're not the names we want to see Nick Ball in with because of how good a fighter he is, how exciting he is, how an exciting potential matchup for them. But he dealt with them in good fashion. Sam Goodman, another fighter, definitely a step up, I think, from Ronnie Rios and TJ Dehaney, a fight that certainly the bookies have a lot closer, but a win over him would really, really kickstart what I hope to be a run of, big fights for Nick Ball, be that unifications, be that a fight with Naoya Inoue if he's to move up to featherweight. So I think on all given form, for me, you've got to have Nick Ball as your number one.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a fairly obvious choice as well. I totally agree, mate. You have to have him as as the number one pound for pound fighter. From the UK, I think, yeah, definitely can't really add much more. I'm hoping, like you, that he is in these big unifications, some massive fights to make at 126 pounds, as you alluded to, potentially Inoue stepping up, and with that Nick Ball fight's been talked about already a few times by Frank Warren and others. So whether or not that's maybe a likely fight to happen, well, we all know that Turki Al Sheikh is a man that could probably make that happen with his relationship now with Inoue and Riyadh season and stuff as well. Obviously, Ball having a good relationship there too. So yeah, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that that fight happens maybe at some stage in 2026 at featherweight. So yeah, I agree with you, mate. Nick Ball number one. You and I both in totally agreement. But we'll mention maybe a couple of more names just quickly before we finish and round off. Daniel Dubois obviously got comprehensively beaten last time out by Alexander Usyk at Wembley in the rematch in July. But before that, obviously held the world title, ironed out Anthony Joshua, much to my disappointment. But yeah, I think maybe a note of a mention for him as well, because I think people were maybe considering him as one of the leading pound for pound fighters, and maybe still should, because it's no disgrace losing to Alexander Usyk.
Yeah, I think you still should. That run before the Usyk defeat, Filip Hrgovic, Jarrell Miller, Anthony Joshua's, three top 15, top 20 heavyweights at the absolute worst, arguably top 10, some would say. The manner of the defeat to Alexander Usyk wasn't great. Daniel Dubois was poor that night, but at the end of the day, it is the consensus pound for pound number one, an all-time great heavyweight. These are things that people are saying in sort of unanimous agreement about Alexander Usyk. So I think you can still have Dubois in and around your top five for sure. Another name throughout you again, maybe one for a year or two's time. Well, 6 months time, a few months time. World title fight coming up. Dalton Smith. Well, we expect him to be in against Sabril Matias. If you could pull that off, that'd be an unbelievable win. Adam Azim, in terms of abilities, probably right up there, just not the names in the resume. So even though we're in a bit of a lull at the minute, fingers crossed, a year's time, 18 months' time, the picture is looking a bit better.
For sure, mate. And I'm going to mention Chris Eubank Jr. as well, just because despite not being a bona fide world champion, never winning a proper world title. I mean, he's always up there when you look on like BoxRec and stuff and whatever in all these British rankings. He always seems to be all right up near the top. So I'll throw him in there. But I mean, ultimately, I think if he was to fight for Shiraz, for example, it could be a fairly quick night in Shiraz's favor. But yeah, just going to throw him in there as well because especially after that
I didn't
Conor
know you
Benn.
used BoxRec.
No, never. That's another esteemed colleague of ours is the pro there. But yeah, Danny, enjoyed that discussion with you. Who we think Britain's best current male pound for pound fighters are. We've both agreed that Nick Ball is the number one at the minute. Guys, let us know in the comments your thoughts, whether you agree with Danny and I, whether it is someone else, whether it's someone we've maybe forgotten and not mentioned at all. Let us know in the comments your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button to the channel if you're not doing so already. And yeah, check out all of the rest of the content we have coming to you on basically a daily basis. Danny, pleasure as always, mate. Speak to you again soon.
Cheers, mate.